I know that the statistics for kids after divorce is really scary. And if you're like the men that I work with, you're probably logical and rational, and statistics mean a lot, right? You're looking at the facts and you're like, the facts are that divorce is really shitty for kids, right? And the outcomes are really shitty for them. But one of the mistakes that I see a lot of people making is they're not actually asking what's behind the statistics. What is it about divorce, about that experience specifically, that is affecting their kids? And if you look at that, then you actually can do a lot to mitigate the potential impact of the divorce on your kids. Interestingly, this isn't actually the mistake I'm talking about in the title. This is another mistake, but it's not the huge one that I'm going to get to in just a moment. But this mistake is pretty important too, because you might not be able to control your divorce. I'm a divorce coach for men, and a lot of the men I work with didn't want the divorce. In fact, they fought it. They did everything they could to try to save the marriage, but they're getting divorced anyway. And if you have kids, that situation can feel pretty hopeless, pretty helpless, because you want the best for your kids. And here are all of these statistics telling you like how awful their life is going to be because of the divorce, and you can't control that. And as a parent, right, to not be able to protect your kids from this thing that's happening to them is pretty awful. But I see a lot of people, a lot of my clients, a lot of men getting stuck in that hole, that place where this sucks, it shouldn't be happening to them, and it is happening to them, and I can't do anything about it. But if we dig under the surface, what is it specifically about divorce that messes kids up? Well, then we find that there are actually things that we can do to help them. So there's a lot of different things that go into this. Part of it is a lack of stability, and not feeling stable for the kids. A huge piece of it is that most parents during divorce are not, and often after, are not really emotionally available and present with their kids because they're too busy dealing with their own pain, their own emotions that feel overwhelming and out of control. And so they can't really be present emotionally with their kids in the way that they need. That's a huge one. But there's another thing going on here that I think gets really overlooked, and we have so much power here to do something amazing for your kids if we're willing to look at it. So here is the huge mistake that I see a lot of people making during separation and divorce, and it's forgetting that your kids are half your ex. I recently had an email from one of you, one of my viewers here on YouTube, who was just telling me about a nightmare of a custody situation. I've heard some nasty stories. This one was pretty bad, right? Really being alienated from kids, not being able to see the mom, one parent having one child all the time, the other having the other, the kids not having time together, and just across the board, mom being totally unwilling to work on things. Just a really toxic situation. And on top of it, this poor guy, there's a lot of other pieces going on too. He didn't want the divorce. There's infidelity involved. There's a lot of pain points. So he's upset. He's mad at her. He's hurting. He's dealing with a lot of really valid emotions. But in his email, he said, is there anything else that I can do? Is there anything else I can do for my kids right now? And I told him that there was one thing I could think of, and it was probably not what he would want to hear. And I'm going to tell it to you, it's probably not what you want to hear either, whether your situation is as messy and painful and difficult as his, or if you're just, dealing with your ex-wife who really disappointed you and let you down and gave up on the marriage and maybe is with somebody else and maybe was with somebody else even while you were together, right? Whether it's extreme and dramatic or more mundane and painful, this advice will help you, but you're not going to like it. My advice is to forgive your ex. Really, truly, genuinely, from the inside of your heart and soul, forgive her. It's not for her. It's because your kids are half her. I don't know how old your kids are. Maybe they're little still. But there will come a day, now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, where they do something, say something that reminds them of her. One day your kids are going to look in the mirror and they are going to see something of their mother in themselves because they are half her, right? She is in them. There are going to be aspects of their personalities, their choices, their relationship patterns, the words that they choose. One day they're going to be like, holy shit, I sound like my mother. And in that moment where your children recognize their mother in themselves, they are also going to remember how you felt about her. Whatever judgment you have about your ex-wife, whether you think that she's a bitch or crazy or weak or selfish or greedy, whatever that judgment is, your kids are aware of it on some level. Even if you are incredibly careful with your language and to not badmouth your ex, something like 80% of human communication is nonverbal. Your body language, the tone of your voice, all of the things that you don't say, all of that filters in subconsciously into your kids. They have a sense. They might not even be consciously aware of it, but they have a felt sense of how you feel about their mother. Whether you like her or not, whether you're judging her or not, they have a sense of that. They can feel it. And so when that day comes, when they look in the mirror and they see their mother looking back at them, they're also going to feel that judgment on themselves. And at that moment, they're not going to be mad at you about it. They're not even going to be thinking about you. They're just going to have picked up this sense that their mother is crazy or greedy or bad or weak or selfish or whatever it is. And they're going to turn that judgment onto themselves because there I am, right? And I'm her, and she's me, and she's in me, and I'm part of her. And if she was crazy, if she was broken or bad or selfish or greedy or lost or any of these things, then that means a part of me must be that way too. This is the reason that when I have clients who have children, I really encourage them to do the hard work of real forgiveness, like truly forgiving your ex, which really just means having such a deep understanding of the suffering that a human brain goes through and how humans react to suffering and what makes us behave the way they do, that you can have compassion for her. Doesn't mean that what she did is okay or justifiable, just that on some level you understand it and you can have compassion for the person, the human being that is in pain and has acted in the ways that she has, no matter how poorly that is. Right? This isn't about condoning or justification. And honestly, your ex-wife never needs to know that you forgave her. This is really not for her. It is not about her. It's for your kids. It will make you feel better too, because you'll be carrying around less anger, less resentment, less hurt. And when you give her compassion, you're the one who gets to feel that. So you'll be walking around with more compassion. But most importantly, your kids will feel that compassion and that understanding. And then when that day comes where they recognize their mother in themselves, they're going to be more likely to have compassion for that part of who they are as well. I am not going to lie to you and tell you that this is easy. You already know it's not. Forgiveness is hard. It's harder than anger. It's harder than resentment. It's harder than depression or despair or hopelessness. It's hard. But you can do it. And the reason I can say that without even knowing you is because I know that you've already done hard things. You're going through this, separation, divorce. I'm imagining if you're watching this, you probably have kids that you love very dearly and want to be okay. You have already done some of the hardest things that a person can do. You can do this too. And you have such a powerful source of motivation because when you do this, when you find the compassion, the understanding, and the forgiveness for her, what you are doing is giving your children the gift of self-compassion and self-forgiveness. And honestly, I can't imagine anything more important for any of us. There are usually a couple of things you have to do first before forgiveness is really possible. With my clients, what I've seen is that there's really two important kind of foundations or groundwork that has to be done before they can find forgiveness for their ex. And those two things are these. One is to calm your nervous system, which is basically making overwhelming and painful emotions manageable so that you're not hijacked by your anger or your grief or your pain, and that you can really be intentional in how you function and how you respond to emotions. So that is all about nervous system regulation. And then the second level is to get really clear on your sense of self. Who are you now? Who are you after this marriage? Who are you after this divorce? What do you know to be true on a really deep level about yourself? Finding that felt sense of core identity is really important. And what I usually see is that when clients focus on those two things, the natural next step is to extend some of the awareness. So they've been cultivating a lot of self-awareness, self-understanding, self-compassion when they work on nervous system regulation and confidence and identity. The natural next step then is to extend some of what they've learned about themselves and their own human brain to their ex. And it's easier then to develop a deeper understanding of her emotions, her responses to them, and through that understanding to find forgiveness. So since there's kind of a lot of work involved in that, I actually made a whole nother video about how to go about doing that. So come with me into this next video. Let's lay the groundwork so that you can be in a place where you are feeling emotionally stable and grounded and clear enough that forgiveness is actually a possibility. Then we can get to really supporting your kids in the most meaningful way. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.